Please. Is anyone home?
Ma'am, we've been walking for hours. Every house slammed the door on us.
He's not breathing right. Please, please.
25 men, bearded, scarred, leather torn open. One of them on his knees in her snow, hands shaking too hard to hold his own friend up.
Please. We need help.
Inside, her fridge was almost empty. Rent was 3 weeks late. She had nothing, but they had less.
Get him inside.
God bless you, ma'am. God bless you.
What Vanessa didn't know yet, by sunrise, one phone call would bring 100 more men thundering to her door, and the whole town would learn who she really was. So, let me back up and tell you who Vanessa Ingram really is. Because before the headlines, before the rumors, before everybody in town thought they had her figured out, she was just a mom trying to survive. 3 hours earlier, Vanessa Ingram was scraping the bottom of a peanut butter jar. She held it up to the kitchen light, tilted it, and tried to catch one more knife's worth onto the blade. Caleb was upstairs doing homework. He had asked for a peanut butter sandwich for lunch tomorrow, and she had promised. So she kept scraping the jar. Outside the window, the first heavy flakes were already falling. She set the empty jar down and pressed her hands flat against the cold counter for 1 second. That was all she let herself have on most days. Then she moved. She peeled the name tag off her shirt, Vanessa, diner helper, and pulled on a second shirt right over it. Vanessa, night custodian. 2 jobs, 1 body. She had 35 minutes before her next shift, and the storm was rolling in fast. The fridge had half a carton of milk, 2 eggs, a hard heel of bread, and the empty peanut butter jar she had just scraped clean. Payday was Friday. It was only Tuesday night. Mama? Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway in his 2 small blue pajamas, 8 years old, skinny as a little rail, holding up his math worksheet. Did Daddy like peanut butter? The question landed soft, the way his questions about Daniel always did. He loved it, Vanessa said. He used to eat it straight out of the jar with a spoon. Drove me crazy. Caleb smiled at that. He smiled at every little scrap of his father she ever gave him. He had only been 2 when Daniel died. He didn't remember his father at all. He only had the small pieces she could carry back to him, and most days she was just too tired to carry any. I'm gonna fix that leak when it stops snowing, baby, she said, nodding at the pot in the corner, catching slow drips. You said that last time, Mama. I know, baby. It's okay. I like the sound of it now. She turned toward the sink so he wouldn't see her face break. On the shelf above the stove sat the only 2 things in the house she would never sell. A wedding photo, Vanessa in a borrowed dress, Daniel in his marine dress blues, both of them laughing like they had no idea what was coming. And right beside it, a closed wooden shadow box. She had not opened it in 4 years. She couldn't. Caleb followed her eyes. Mama, can I see what's in the box one day, please? One day, baby. You always say that too, Mama. I know, baby. She kissed the top of his head and turned away before he could see the rest of her face. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Mr. Klein, her landlord. Rent. Friday. No more extensions. I'm not playing this time, Vanessa. She locked the screen and slid the phone face down. 3 full weeks late. Friday was her last chance. A soft knock came at the back door. Dottie Brown stuck her head inside, snow melting in her hair. Vanessa's coworker. The only real friend she had left after grief had made her too tired to call anyone else back. Girl, you hear the radio? Worst storm in 50 years. They're closing the whole highway tonight. I gotta work tonight, Dottie. Vanessa. Dottie, I gotta work tonight. Dottie looked at her for a long, quiet moment. Then she set a foil-wrapped plate on the table. A few slices of meatloaf, some green beans. For the boy. Dottie, you don't have to do this. Hush. Eat it before it freezes. She slipped out before Vanessa could argue. Vanessa stood there with her hand on the warm foil, feeling the heat through it, and pressed her lips together hard against the tears. Pride is a luxury, she had learned the hard way. 6 years ago, when the 2 Marines in dress uniform showed up at her door, she had felt pride leave her body and never quite come back the same way. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve before Caleb came back downstairs. Outside, the snow was thickening fast. Across the fence, the curtains in Mrs. Hartwell's living room twitched. Vanessa caught the movement and pretended she hadn't seen it. Mrs. Hartwell had lived next door for 9 years and had never once said hello to her. She watched Vanessa's house the way someone watches a TV show they don't really like. Vanessa fed Caleb the meatloaf, heated milk for him on the stove. She told him a story about his father. A small one, a safe one, about how Daniel could whistle through his teeth and make a stray dog come running from a block away. Caleb laughed out loud. She tucked him in. "Mama, will Daddy ever come home one day?" She froze in the doorway. 6 years and the questions still came in new shapes. "No, baby, but he watches over us every single day." "How do you know, Mama?" "Because that's what good men do, even when you can't see them anymore." She turned off the light. She left for her night shift at 9 sharp, locked the front door, looked up at the sky pouring snow. She didn't know it yet, but 2 miles outside town, 25 men were already in serious trouble. And by midnight, they would be on her porch. The radio called it the storm of the century. It lied. It was worse. By 10 o'clock, the highway was gone. Not closed, gone. A white wall pressing against the windshields of the few cars still trying. By 11:30, Vanessa was home again. Her custodial shift had been cut short. The office building had sent everyone home before they got stranded. She had no idea how lucky that was. 2 miles outside town, the Iron Watch veterans MC was bleeding into the snow. 25 of them, all men, all veterans. They had been riding home from a memorial for a brother they had buried that morning. A brother who had finally lost his fight with the war he carried home. They had ridden out of grief, not stupidity. The forecast had said flurries. The forecast had been wrong. The ice took them on a bend in the road. The lead bike went down first. The second hit it. The third tried to swerve and slid sideways into a guardrail at 30 miles an hour. By the time the last rider was off his bike, 6 men were on the ground and one was not moving at all. His name was Gus Wilson, 64 years old, 2 fingers missing from a war 40 years gone. A piece of shrapnel still buried in his hip that the doctors had said wasn't worth the risk of digging out. The cold woke that shrapnel up like it had been waiting 40 years for tonight. "Gus, Gus, look at me. Stay with me, brother." The road captain was a mountain of a man named Earl Davis. 6'5", 300 pounds, a scar that ran from his eyebrow into his beard. He had pulled men out of burning Humvees in Fallujah. He was not panicking. But he was close. "We got to get him warm, right now." The bikes that still ran wouldn't carry them all. 2 of the men had broken ribs. One had a gash across his forehead, pouring blood into his eye. Wyatt Brooks, the biggest of them after Earl, was holding Gus against his own chest to share body heat through ripped open leather. "We walk," Earl said. "Town's a mile and a half. We walk him in." They walked. A mile and a half in a blizzard, carrying a dying man in a coat soaked through with blood and ice, is not a mile and a half. It is a war. They reached the edge of town just after midnight. They saw the diner first. Lights on. Earl pounded on the glass. The owner looked at them through the window, at the beards crusted with ice, at the torn leather, at the blood on Wyatt's coat, and killed the lights right in front of them, locked the door, walked away. "Sir, please, we got a man dying out here." He didn't turn around. They tried the motel. A woman opened the door 3 inches, took one look at 25 massive scarred men in shredded leather, and slammed it. "Ma'am, we got a Marine going hypothermic." The porch light went off. They tried the church. The pastor's house was dark. They knocked anyway. A curtain moved. The curtain stopped moving. Nobody came. They tried 4 more houses. One man cracked his door, saw them, and pulled out a shotgun. "Get off my property." "Sir, we just need to call—" "I said get off my property." The next house turned on a sprinkler, in a blizzard. The icy water hit Wyatt and Gus across the chest and froze instantly into their leather. Wyatt didn't even react. He was past reacting. He was just trying to keep Gus's heart beating against his own. By the time they reached the bottom of Vanessa Street, 3 more men were stumbling. Earl's beard was a solid block of ice. Gus had stopped talking 10 minutes ago. He had started making a soft, wet, gurgling sound instead. Earl stopped in the middle of the street and looked up at the row of houses. Every single one was dark, every porch light off, every door locked. He had counted 9 refusals. 9 American doors closed in the face of American veterans, in an American blizzard, because they looked like the wrong kind of men. He was about to lose Gus right there in the snow. Then he saw it. One house, halfway down the street, with a single warm light still glowing in the front window. He didn't know who lived there. He didn't know it was a black single mother with an empty fridge and a son asleep upstairs. He didn't know she was the only person on that whole street who had not killed her porch light. He just knew it was the last warm light in the world. "That one," he said. "Move." They moved. 25 men, 3 of them being half carried now, one of them barely breathing, dragged themselves the last 100 yards through snow up to their knees. They reached her porch. Wyatt Brooks dropped to his knees in the snow with Gus in his arms. Earl Davis lifted one shaking, frozen, scarred fist. and he knocked. Vanessa was wiping down the kitchen counter when she heard it. Not a knock exactly, more like something heavy hitting wood. Once, twice, a third time, weaker. She froze with the dish rag in her hand. Nobody knocked on her door at midnight. Nobody knocked on her door at all most days. She set the rag down slow, walked to the front window, pulled back one corner of the curtain, and her heart stopped. There were so many of them, a wall of men on her porch and spilling down into her front yard, huge, beards crusted with ice, leather jackets ripped open, blood on at least 3 of them that she could see. One of them was on his knees in her snow, holding another man who looked dead. For 1 second, every single thing the world had ever taught her to be afraid of was standing on her front porch. Caleb was asleep upstairs. The door was a cheap one. She had pepper spray in her purse and no gun in the house. Her hand started shaking on the curtain. Her own breath went short and fast. Then she saw it. Through the snow, through the blood, through the beards, a patch on the biggest one's vest. Faded, burned at one edge. But she knew that emblem the way she knew her own face in the mirror. USMC. Eagle, globe, anchor. The same patch Daniel used to wear over his heart. The patch she had ironed onto 100 of his shirts. The patch she had laid against her cheek the night the 2 officers came to her door. She let the curtain fall. She unlocked the door. The wind hit her like a slap. Earl Davis filled her doorway, ice falling off his beard, and the first thing he did was take his hat off. "Ma'am, I am so sorry to bother you. My brother's dying. Every house on this street already turned us away. Please." Vanessa looked past him, counted 25 men, counted the one on his knees, counted the blood. "Get him inside, now." "Ma'am, we can pay." "I said get him inside." They moved. Wyatt Brooks came through the door first, carrying Gus like a child. Vanessa cleared the couch with one sweep of her arm. Magazines, Caleb's homework, a basket of laundry. Gone. Lay him down right here. Easy, easy." She was already moving. Thermostat up, every blanket she owned out of the hall closet, every towel out of the bathroom. The space heater from her own bedroom dragged into the living room and plugged in. "He's got a piece of shrapnel in his hip," Earl said behind her. 40 years. The cold woke it up. "How long has he been like this?" 40 minutes, maybe more. "Get his coat off, get everything wet off him. I'll be right back." She ran to the kitchen, the fridge. Half a carton of milk, 2 eggs, a heel of bread, Dottie's leftover meatloaf, Caleb's last can of formula soup she had been saving for the day the food ran out. She took all of it, every single thing. She put a pot on every burner, the milk for warmth, the soup stretched with water and the eggs whisked in to feed 25 men, the bread torn up for whoever could chew. She ran out of pots and pulled out her one good mixing bowl and started boiling water in that too. "Mama?" Caleb stood at the bottom of the stairs in his pajamas. He looked at the living room full of giant, scarred, bleeding strangers. She braced for him to scream. He didn't. He just looked at her. "Mama, are they hurt?" "Yeah, baby, they're real hurt." He walked past her, past 25 men twice his size, and went straight to the linen closet. He came back dragging his own blanket, the blue one with the rocket ships, the only blanket he ever slept with, the one he had picked out himself at the store when he was 4. He walked over to Wyatt Brooks, this huge bearded man kneeling in his mama's living room with blood on his coat, and held the blanket up to him. "For your friend." Wyatt Brooks took the blanket, and the biggest man in that room, a man who had carried his dying brother 1.5 miles through a blizzard without crying once, bent his forehead down to that blue rocket ship blanket and broke. Vanessa knelt by Gus and started rubbing warmth back into his hands. "Okay, hold on. Hold on. This lady has 2 jobs, an empty fridge, rent due Friday, and she still gave 25 strangers her last food, her last blankets, even her own heater. Bro, I don't know if I could do that. Like, for real. That's a whole different heart." Gus's fingers were gray. Vanessa kept rubbing them between her own. "Stay with me, sir. You hear me? You got brothers in this room who need you. You don't get to quit on them tonight." His eyelids fluttered. That's right. Come on back to us." Earl was kneeling on the other side of the couch, his huge hand on Gus's shoulder, watching this small black woman in a custodian's shirt do what 9 houses had refused to do. Around the room, 24 of the scariest-looking men anyone had ever seen were doing the gentlest things she had ever watched. One was sweeping melted snow off her floor with a dish towel so nobody slipped. 2 were stripping off their own dry inner layers to wrap around the men with broken ribs. 3 were standing watch by the door, not because there was a threat, but because that was what they had been trained to do when their brothers were down, and they couldn't turn it off. The man with the gash on his forehead refused care until everyone else was treated. He just kept pressing a piece of his own shirt to his head and waiting his turn. The space heater hummed. Gus's color started coming back inch by inch. "There you go," Vanessa whispered. "There you go, sir. Welcome home." And that's when Wyatt Brooks lifted his head from Caleb's blanket. He stood up slowly. He took 1 step. 2. His boots left wet prints across her floor. He stopped in front of the shelf above the stove, the shelf with the wedding photo and the closed wooden shadow box. He stared at the photo. His face went white. Then it went whiter. His hand reached out, shaking, and touched the glass over Daniel Ingram's face. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Oh my God. Oh my God." He turned around. He looked at Vanessa kneeling on her own living room floor with his dying brother's hand in hers. He couldn't speak. He pulled out his phone with hands that would not stop shaking, and he walked out onto the freezing porch alone to make a call. Vanessa didn't see him go. She was still telling Gus to breathe. Wyatt Brooks stood on Vanessa's frozen porch with his phone pressed to his ear, snow piling on his shoulders. He didn't feel it. "Sir, I'm sorry to call you at this hour." A pause on the other end. "Wyatt? Son, are you hurt? Where are you?" "Colonel, I need you to listen to me." "I'm listening." Wyatt's voice cracked. "We took a fall on the ice outside Brookhaven, Pennsylvania. Gus is bad. Everyone shut their doors on us. Everyone, except one." "Which house, son?" "Sir, the woman who opened her door. I just saw a photo on her shelf." "What photo?" "It's Sergeant Daniel Ingram, sir." The line went silent. "Wyatt, say that again." "It's Daniel. It's his wife. It's his little boy. Sir, this is the house. This is the family. After 6 years, this is them." The colonel's voice came back quiet and steady, the way it did before he gave an order nobody questioned. "What's the address?" Wyatt told him. "Don't you move from that house. I'm making calls. We will be there at first light, all of us." "Sir, she doesn't know. I don't think she even knows what's in that box on her shelf." "Then by tomorrow, son, the whole damn country is going to know." The line went dead. Wyatt stood there a long minute, tears freezing on his beard before they hit the porch. 6 years. 6 years he had carried Daniel Ingram's name like a stone in his chest. 6 years of waking at 3 in the morning because Daniel had given him that breath and there was no one to give it back to. He wiped his face, walked back inside. By 2 in the morning, Gus was sitting up, confused, embarrassed, old. He kept trying to apologize. Vanessa kept telling him to hush and drink the broth. The men ate in shifts, 25 mouths on one stretched pot of soup. No one complained. The man with the cut on his head finally let Vanessa clean it with strips of an old pillowcase because she didn't have real bandages. Around 3, the men started to fall asleep where they sat. Caleb had crawled into Vanessa's lap and fallen asleep against her shoulder. The house was warm, the warmest it had been all winter. When the first gray light came through the window, Earl Davis pulled a thick roll of cash from inside his vest. He walked over to the recliner. "Ma'am, I want you to take this. Please." He held it out. It was a lot. More cash than Vanessa had seen in years. Friday's rent was sitting right there in his hand. She looked at the money. She looked at Earl. "Put it away, sir." "Ma'am, you saved his life. We are not leaving here without—" "Sir," her voice was low so she wouldn't wake Caleb. "If I take that money tonight, what I did stops being what I did. It becomes something I got paid for. I'm not going to let you do that to me. Or to my husband." Earl froze. "Your husband, ma'am?" She nodded toward the shelf, toward the wedding photo, toward the closed shadow box. "He was a Marine, too. He died over there. He'd have done the same thing for any one of you, on any night of the week, for free. So you put your money away, sir." Earl looked at the photo. He looked back at her. He put the cash away. He took his hat off, held it against his chest. "Yes, ma'am." In the corner, Wyatt Brooks pretended to be asleep so nobody would see him cry. His phone buzzed once, a message from the colonel. "We ride at sunrise, all of us." Vanessa rocked her son and watched the snow start to slow outside her window. She had no idea that across town, in 9 different houses, people who had locked their doors were already waking up. She had no idea that the woman next door had been watching her porch all night. She just held Caleb and let herself, for the first time in 6 years, feel something close to peace. It would not last the morning. At 7 a.m., the snow stopped. The sun came up over Brookhaven, thin and pale, and Vanessa's street looked like a postcard, 3 feet of fresh white, smoke curling from chimneys. The kind of morning that felt clean. It was not clean. Behind one set of curtains at 412 Maple Street, Margaret Hartwell had been awake since 4. She had watched the porch next door all night. She had counted 25 men. She had seen the leather. She had seen the blood. She had seen a black woman she had never spoken to in 9 years let every one of them inside. By 6:30, Margaret Hartwell was on the phone. "Yes, hello. I'd like to report a situation on Maple Street. My neighbor, the single mother, she's harboring some kind of motorcycle gang. At least 20. They look dangerous. The child is in the house. Please send someone right away." She hung up, then dialed a second number, Child Protective Services. She used the words unsafe environment. She used the words exposed to violent men. She used the words, "I'm just trying to protect that little boy." She hung up, made coffee, sat by her window, and waited. Next door, Vanessa was frying the last 2 eggs into 25 tiny pieces because the men had insisted on helping clean up before they left. The riders were shoveling her walk. Earl was on the porch with a shovel from her shed. Wyatt was clearing the path to the street. 3 men were on her roof with a tarp Earl had pulled from his saddlebag, patching the leak that had dripped all winter. Caleb was on the front steps, handing out coffee to grown men who took the cups from him like they were holy water. Vanessa stepped onto the porch with a dish towel over her shoulder and just looked at it. Her yard full of veterans, her son laughing, the leak being fixed by strangers. She had not felt this much like a family in 6 years. That's when she saw the cruiser. Lights on, no siren. Turning slowly onto Maple Street and coming straight toward her house. Behind it, a second car, unmarked. A woman in the driver's seat carrying a folder. Vanessa's stomach dropped through the porch. Earl saw it too. He stopped shoveling. "Ma'am, you expecting someone?" "No." Across the fence, Margaret Hartwell stepped onto her own porch in a clean white robe and crossed her arms over her chest. She was smiling. The cruiser stopped at the curb. Deputy Ray Calloway stepped out and put his hand on his belt. Wyatt Brooks, halfway up the path, slowly straightened up. He pulled his phone from his pocket. He typed one word and hit send. Now. 6 miles out of town, 100 engines turned over at the same time. Deputy Ray Calloway walked up Vanessa's path with one hand on his belt the whole way. He was 26 years old. 2 years on the force. He had never made a real arrest in his life. He had also never once disobeyed a complaint called in by Margaret Hartwell, because Margaret Hartwell was on the church board, and his mother was on the church board, and that was how Brookhaven worked. Behind him, the woman from the unmarked car was already opening her folder. Ms. Karen Dawson, Child Protective Services. 12 years on the job, tired eyes. "Ms. Ingram?" "Yes, sir." "I'm going to need you to step away from the men, ma'am." "Excuse me?" "I said step away from the men, right now." The veterans on her lawn stopped moving, 25 of them, shovels still in their hands. Earl came down off the porch slow, hands open, palms out. "Officer, we were just leaving. Everything's fine." "Sir, I need you to back up." "I'm backing up, son. I'm backing up." Calloway turned to Vanessa. "Ma'am, we received a call about a possible dangerous gathering at this address. Involving a minor child. We need to do a welfare check on the boy." Caleb was on the porch steps, the coffee thermos still in his hands. Vanessa moved between him and the deputy without thinking. "He's fine. He's right here. He's fine." "Ma'am, the call also reported you may be harboring known criminals." "They're not criminals. They're veterans. They had an accident in the storm." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come down to the station while we sort this out." Karen Dawson stepped forward. Her voice was softer, but the words were worse. "Miss Ingram, until we can confirm the home environment is safe, I'm going to need to take Caleb with me." Vanessa stopped breathing. "No." "Ma'am, this is standard procedure." No, you are not taking my son." "Ma'am, you are not taking my son." Calloway reached for his cuffs. "Ms. Ingram, if you resist, I will have to place you under arrest." Across the fence, Margaret Hartwell was watching with both hands pressed to her mouth, as if she were shocked, as if she had not made this happen herself. Earl Davis took one step forward. "Officer, listen to me. You don't want to do this." "Sir, step back." "Officer, you are about to make the biggest mistake of your career." "Sir, step back." Calloway grabbed Vanessa's wrist. Caleb started crying. And that's when the ground started to shake. At first it sounded like thunder, far off. Then closer, then closer. Then it wasn't thunder at all. It was engines. Calloway froze with the cuffs halfway out. They came over the rise at the end of Maple Street like a wave. 100 motorcycles. Headlights blazing in daylight. Behind them, 2 news vans Vanessa didn't even know had been called. Behind those, 3 more cars, and behind those, a black SUV with a small American flag on the antenna. The roar filled the whole street. Margaret Hartwell's coffee cup slipped out of her hand and broke on her porch, and she didn't even look down. The column pulled up in front of Vanessa's house and stopped. The engines cut. 100 bikes, 100 men, all in colors, all in patches. Iron Watch and 4 other chapters from across 3 states. At the front, a man in his 60s stepped off a black Harley, silver hair, granite jaw, a long gray coat, service ribbons pinned over his heart, Colonel Eli Bennett. He didn't look at the deputy. He didn't look at the CPS worker. He didn't look at Margaret Hartwell. He walked straight up Vanessa's path and stopped 6 feet from her porch and took his hat off. Mrs. Ingram, Vanessa couldn't speak. My name is Colonel Eli Bennett, United States Marine Corps, retired. I was your husband's commanding officer. The whole street went silent. Ma'am, I have been looking for you for 6 years. The colonel reached into the inside pocket of his coat. He pulled out a folded blue case. He opened it. Inside, on a strip of pale blue ribbon dotted with white stars, was a 5-pointed gold star, the Medal of Honor. The cameras from the news vans were already rolling. Mrs. Ingram, your husband, Sergeant Daniel Ingram, threw himself on a grenade in Fallujah, Iraq, 6 years ago to save 5 of his brothers. One of those brothers is standing right behind me. Wyatt Brooks lowered his head. For his actions that day, the president posthumously awarded your husband this country's highest military honor. We tried to deliver it. The records had the wrong address. We never stopped looking, ma'am. Vanessa's knees almost gave out. Earl caught her elbow. The colonel turned, slow, and finally looked at Deputy Calloway. Calloway still had his hand on Vanessa's wrist. Son, take your hand off her, right now. Calloway let go like he had been burned. This woman, the colonel said, loud enough for every camera, every neighbor, every closed door on the street, took in 25 veterans last night when 9 houses on this street locked their doors. She fed them with food she didn't have. She refused payment. We made a promise to her husband 6 years ago that no family of his would ever stand alone. He turned to Margaret Hartwell. Ma'am, you called the police on a Medal of Honor widow. Margaret Hartwell's face went the color of paper. He turned to Calloway. And you tried to take her child. The colonel turned back to Vanessa. Ma'am, on behalf of the Marine Corps and every brother standing behind me, we are so very sorry we are 6 years late. He put one knee in the snow. Behind him, 100 men took off their hats. Vanessa Ingram, in a custodian's shirt with 2 name tags still pinned to it, started to cry. And every camera on Maple Street caught it. Colonel Bennett got back on his feet slow. He turned to Karen Dawson from CPS, who was just standing there with the folder open in her hands and her mouth open in her face. Ma'am, are you here to take this woman's child? Karen Dawson closed the folder. No, sir, I am not. Are you satisfied that this home is safe? Yes, sir, I am. Then I would ask you to write that down, today, so that nothing like this ever happens to this family again. Yes, sir. She walked back to her car. She did not look at Margaret Hartwell. The colonel turned to Deputy Calloway. Calloway had not moved. The handcuffs were still half out of his belt. He looked like a kid who had wandered into a room he had no business being in. Son, what's your name? Deputy Calloway, sir. Deputy Calloway, you're going to drive back to your station. You're going to file an honest report. You're going to write down that you came onto this property and tried to arrest a Gold Star widow because a neighbor who has never spoken to her made a phone call. And tomorrow your sheriff and I are going to have a conversation. Do you understand me, son? Yes, sir. Look at her. Sir? I said look at her. Look at Mrs. Ingram. And before you leave, you say what you need to say. Calloway turned. His face was the color of his uniform shirt. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I should have looked. I'm sorry. Vanessa wiped her face with the back of her hand. She nodded once. She did not speak. She did not have to. Calloway walked back to his cruiser like a man walking out of a courtroom. Margaret Hartwell tried to slip back inside her house. Ma'am, the colonel's voice carried across the fence like a flag. Don't you move. Margaret Hartwell froze with her hand on her own doorknob. Ma'am, I am not going to embarrass you any further on camera. I am going to leave that to your conscience. But I want you to look across this fence at the woman whose door you tried to slam shut from the outside. And I want you to remember, every single morning for the rest of your life, that her husband died so that you could stand on that porch in that white robe and make the phone call you made this morning." Margaret Hartwell could not look up. She went inside. The curtain did not twitch again all day. The colonel turned back to Vanessa. He climbed the porch steps. He held the blue case out to her with both hands. "Mrs. Ingram, this belongs to you. It has belonged to you for 6 years." Vanessa took it. Her hands shook so badly that Earl had to steady her elbow again. She looked down at the gold star. She looked at Caleb, who had stopped crying and was watching her with very big eyes. "Mama, is that Daddy's?" "Yes, baby." "Why does Daddy have a medal?" Colonel Bennett dropped down to one knee in front of the little boy. "Son, your daddy was the bravest man I ever served with. And one day, when you're a little older, I am going to come back and tell you the whole story. Every word of it. Is that all right with you?" Caleb nodded so hard his hat almost fell off. The colonel stood back up. He turned to face the 100 men still standing in the street with their hats off. "Brothers, we made a vow." 100 voices answered him as one. "We made a vow." "What does the vow say?" "No family of ours stands alone." "Louder!" "No family of ours stands alone." The colonel turned back to Vanessa. "Ma'am, effective today, the Iron Watch Veterans Foundation, with the backing of every chapter behind me, is establishing the Sergeant Daniel Ingram Memorial Trust. We have already raised $100,000. It is going into a college fund for your son. It is set up. It is funded. It is in his name. There is nothing for you to sign except the paperwork that says you accepted on his behalf." Vanessa put her hand over her mouth. "We are not finished, ma'am." Earl Davis stepped forward. "Ma'am, the men on your roof saw the leak. The men in your kitchen saw the rest. We're taking the house. By that, I mean every brother behind me has a trade. Roofing, electrical, plumbing, drywall, HVAC. We are going to rebuild this house from the foundation up. Free. Starting tomorrow morning. We'll be done before spring." "Sir, I can't—" "Ma'am, with all respect, you don't get to say no to this one." Wyatt Brooks stepped forward next. He took his hat off and held it against his chest. "Mrs. Ingram, Daniel and me, we made a promise to each other in a bad place a long time ago, that if one of us didn't come home, the other one would take care of the family. He came home in my place. So, if you'll let me, ma'am, I'd like to keep that promise now. I will be in that boy's life for the rest of mine. I will teach him to fish. I will teach him to drive. I will teach him every single thing his daddy would have taught him. If you'll let me." Vanessa could not speak. She just opened her arms. Wyatt Brooks, 300 pounds of scarred, bearded, war-torn man, walked into the hug of a small black woman in a custodian's shirt, and he stayed there a long, long time. The colonel watched. The 100 men watched. The cameras watched. And across the fence, behind a closed curtain, Margaret Hartwell sat alone in her kitchen and did not drink her coffee. The video hit the internet by lunchtime. A reporter for the local affiliate uploaded a 90-second clip with the caption, "Veteran widow honored on her own front porch after neighbor calls police." By that afternoon, it had 250,000 views. By the next morning, it had crossed 8 million. By the end of the week, 2 national networks had picked it up, and the small frame of Vanessa Ingram in a custodian's shirt with 2 name tags still pinned to it had been on every morning show in America. The donations started on day 1. A GoFundMe somebody set up without asking her crossed $60,000 before Vanessa even saw it. A retired Marine in San Diego mailed a handwritten letter and a $50 bill, apologizing that he could not send more. A 5th grade class in Atlanta sent $211 in a manila envelope, each kid's name signed on the back, with a card that said "Thank you for being kind." Vanessa didn't touch any of it. The foundation handled every cent. It went into Caleb's trust and into the renovation. The renovation started Saturday. True to Earl Davis's word, the men came back, not 25 this time, 60, with trucks, with lumber, with a crane on a flatbed for the new roof. They worked weekends for 11 weeks. The leak got fixed first. Then the roof. Then the old windows got replaced. Then the heating system. Then they rewired the upstairs. Then the bathroom. Then the kitchen. Then they painted every wall the colors Vanessa picked herself, because Earl said if she didn't pick, they'd paint everything marine green. Caleb learned to use a hammer. He learned to use a tape measure. He learned which uncle would let him sit on the lawnmower and which one would not. By April, the house didn't leak. It didn't groan in the wind. It smelled like fresh paint and breakfast, and the kind of quiet that doesn't have fear in it. Vanessa quit one of her 2 jobs. She kept the diner job because she liked Dottie and the regulars. She let the custodial job go because for the first time in 6 years, she could. The town shifted around her, slow and embarrassed. The diner owner who had killed his lights came by with a paper bag and a face that could not look up. He set it on her counter. 2 pies. He said, "I'm sorry, Vanessa. I was scared. I was wrong." He turned around and left before she could answer. The man with the shotgun did not come by, but his wife did. She brought a casserole and cried at Vanessa's kitchen table and apologized for 9 years of pretending not to know her name. The pastor preached on Vanessa's story without using her name. Everyone in town knew who he meant. That Sunday's collection plate went to the Iron Watch Foundation. Deputy Calloway sent a letter, a long one. He resigned from the force 3 weeks later and went to community college to study social work. The sheriff issued a public apology. Margaret Hartwell did not come out of her house for a month. When she finally did, she walked across the fence in a coat that was not white, knocked on Vanessa's door, and could not look up. "Mrs. Ingram, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to say it to your face." Vanessa looked at her for a long time. "Mrs. Hartwell, I forgave you the morning it happened. Not because what you did was okay, because I wasn't going to carry it for you." Margaret Hartwell started crying on the porch. Vanessa let her cry. She did not invite her in. She also did not close the door on her face. Some things take longer than a month. By summer, the Iron Watch Foundation had launched a program called Open Door, named for what Vanessa did that night. It paired stranded veterans with civilian host families across 4 states. Vanessa was the official spokesperson, paid a real salary for the first time in her adult life. She traveled. She spoke at high schools. She told the story plain, and she always ended the same way. "All I did was open a door." That's all any of us has to do. And one warm Saturday in May, on a stretch of new green grass that used to be a muddy front yard, with 100 bikers grilling burgers and Caleb laughing somewhere in the middle of them, Vanessa Ingram sat down on her new porch with a cup of coffee and finally, let herself rest. That night, after the burgers and the bikers and the long, warm afternoon, Vanessa did something she had not done in 6 years. She took the wooden shadow box down off the shelf. She set it on the new kitchen table. She called Caleb in. The men were still there. Earl on the couch with his boots off, Wyatt by the window, the colonel in the armchair with his coffee. Gus on the porch swing through the screen door, alive, breathing easy. "Caleb, come here, baby. Sit down." He sat. She opened the box. Inside lay her husband's dog tags, a folded letter, a photo of Daniel on his first day in uniform, 18 years old, grinning, and the citation she had never read out loud. She looked across the room. "Wyatt, would you tell him?" Wyatt set his coffee down. He came over and sat on the floor across from the little boy, so they were almost the same height. "Caleb, your daddy was the funniest man in our whole unit. He could whistle through his teeth and call a stray dog from a block away. Did your mama tell you that?" Caleb's eyes went wide. "Yes, she told me that one. That was your daddy. He used to do it to make us laugh when we were tired." Earl cleared his throat. "He cheated at cards, real bad. We all knew. Nobody minded." The colonel smiled into his coffee. He could not sing, at all, and he sang anyway, loud. Gus called in from the porch. "He saved my life twice before he saved Wyatt's." Caleb was laughing now, soft, surprised laughter. The laugh of a little boy who had never known his father. Wyatt took a breath. "And on the last day, Caleb, your daddy did the bravest thing I've ever seen. He saw something coming. He had time to do one thing. He covered me up with his own body so the bad thing would hit him instead of us. He saved 5 of us that day. That's why I'm here, son. I'm here because of your daddy." Caleb looked at the medal lying open on the table. He looked at his mother. "Mama, so Daddy was a hero?" Vanessa swallowed. "Yeah, baby, Daddy was a hero, and so are you, because you're his." Caleb climbed into her lap. He pressed his ear against her chest, the way he used to when he was very small. Vanessa rested her cheek on the top of his head and closed her eyes. Outside, the porch swing creaked. Inside, a small boy was learning his father for the very first time, in a warm kitchen full of the men his father had died for. The shadow box stayed open that night. It stayed open every night after. Here's what I keep coming back to. 9 doors closed on those men that night. The diner, the motel, the pastor, a man with a shotgun, a woman who turned on a sprinkler in a blizzard, people who slept warm while a Marine almost died in their snow. And the one door that opened belonged to a woman who had the least to give. 2 jobs, empty fridge, rent past due, a little boy upstairs. She opened it anyway. I told you this story because the whole town saw a black single mom and judged her. But the veterans, they saw family. She opened one door, and her son finally got his dad back. If this hit you, hit like, share, subscribe. What would you have done? Tell me below.